Hi, and welcome to Widow Talk, real conversations about the stuff people just don't talk about. Today we're talking to Melissa Walker. Hi, Melissa.
Hello, how are you?
Good. Melissa was widowed at 45 years of age when her husband Shane passed away suddenly in 2016 from a brain aneurysm. Today we'll be talking about being widowed with adult children and how Melissa focused on positivity and connection to help her move forward with her grief and create a whole new life for herself and her family. So thanks for talking to us, Melissa. It's lovely to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much.
Melissa, let's just, can you share with us a little of your life with Shane and your family and becoming a widow?
Yep, I sure can. I actually knew Shane as a child. We lived in the same street, went to the same primary school, but we weren't friends at all. And then met up later in life. He was, I was at uni and he was a Pizza Hut manager and was eyeing me off. I had a boyfriend at the time, and just so happened that we got invited to a ball through Pizza Hut and ended up starting to date, all of 21 years of age, and he was 22. We got married 2 years later and then had a son a year later and a daughter a few years later. So they're now 26 and 23, and they were 18 and 21 when Shane passed away. So we were together for 25 years, married for 22. Long relationship, lovely experience, best time of my life.
Fabulous. So part of when we have these fantastic marriages and relationships and family life, one of the things that really strikes us is when we have this sudden loss that's so unexpected and something that we have never envisaged. So how did you cope and get through the shock of Shane's sudden and unexpected passing?
So unfortunately for me, he collapsed on New Year's Eve and then passed away on New Year's Day. So we've got that lovely memory. I think right from the beginning, I had this sense of, I knew deep down he was going to die. I knew that it wasn't going to be good news. And I had this real sense of separating myself from him. It's a hard thing to sort of put into words, but my focus became the children pretty much straight away. I had, even though I look back in that first 12 months, I really didn't accept it. I sort of accepted it then and thought, right, okay, this is happening. I've got to look after them. And they became my focus, particularly my daughter, who was incredibly close to her father. She was only 18. So she, that they did really help me through and became my focus. And then I just wanted to know that I was going to be okay. So I'm a person that needs knowledge and crave knowledge. So I started Googling to find a support group or anything that would help a young widow. My first, things that came up on Google were for veteran, widowed, older women, but nothing for young. And lucky for me, I did actually then find our Melbourne group, the widows group, and it was just an online support group that was private, and it was my saviour in the beginning because I craved wanting to know that I was going to be okay, which sounds ridiculous, but just even that little bit of knowledge from other people that had been through the same thing to see how they were going 3 months, 6 months, 5 years on was so important to me then, to see that you can get through this and it will be okay.
Yeah, I for me, that's not what I did in the early days. For me, that came about 12 months in. But I have heard similar stories. It was when that shock happens, we all respond very differently. And I think that's something that I've certainly learned. Grief is a very, very individualized journey, and things happen at different times, and that's fine for you. Whatever you are going through is your timeline. So, but I know reaching out and connecting was something that really helped me as well. So I'm glad that you've also had that same experience.
Yeah, they're really
Yeah. So Jaden and Hannah were 18 and 21, times which are really important milestone times in our children's transitioning to adulthood and becoming their own people. and I'm sure the loss devastated them as well. So what did you do to help them and to support each other as a family?
Uh, First of all, I took some time off work. So I was a teacher, and Hannah had just got into uni. So she wasn't going back to school to uni till March. And I decided that I'd pretty much stay home till then. I was very lucky with my work that I could do that.
Yeah.
And then I went back part-time. So I felt this real need for us to be like this bubble where we were not in each other's pockets, but we were together quite often. And I mean, the first few weeks there was people coming and going, staying, and then we got to a stage where we just needed the three of us to be together.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, they both had part-time work. They went back to their part-time work, and we just, you know, weekends we were together and stayed together like that. I just needed them. Then when I went back to work, I wanted to show them that the routine of life goes on, and that was important to show them that I think the routine of life is ridiculous, that you cook, that I cooked and I cleaned on the same day and I did the food shopping. All of those things gave them some sort of feeling of that I was okay, that, you know, it gave them that confidence that I was not moving forward, but just that I felt like everything was going to be okay. They were looking to me to see how to react, I suppose. So I just, yeah, we just really sort of not bunkered down, but we were a bit tight knit there for a little while. And I know they would tag team if they were working or seeing a friend. They made sure someone was home with me. So I didn't realise that in the beginning until months and months later that, you know, I heard them having this conversation. I thought, oh, that's really interesting. They didn't want me to be left on my own. I'm a pretty out there person. I'm outgoing. I like people. I didn't really like people then, but
Yeah.
I didn't like being on my own either. So we all made that concerted effort to do things together. Hannah struggled to think about going to uni on her first day. I would never have thought about driving her to uni like I did with all her other milestones when she was younger. But that was the way we got through it. You know, I said, absolutely, it was on the other side of the city. I'll drive you. I'll wait around. And we just managed things like that for how we felt at the time and just to make each other feel better, really.
I think that's really interesting. You know, that different perspective when our kids are also adults, we then it gives us an understanding that they have transitioned to adulthood and they're looking at things through different eyes. And sometimes we forget that as parents, I think. So that support of each other, I think, was, you know, sounds like it was crucial to help you all move forward, and that respect for each other and what those needs were. But I think that's lovely that you overhear this conversation about, well, who's going to be home with mum tonight, you know?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I did make a point. I remember I saw a psychologist for the first 12 months, and I remember saying to her, it was about April, or saying to him, sorry, Hannah had said something snappy to me, and I said, don't speak to me like that. And I said to him, you know, I still will be her mother, and will, you know, put her in her place when that needs to be, despite what's gone on. She still needs to turn out to be a decent person, not think that she's going to get away with things. I mean, she was still only 18, but you know what kids are like, they still will push boundaries or whatever. And I was still mum, you know, I wasn't their friend, I was still mum, and I had to be that for them, because that's what they needed.
And I think that, as you said, those issues of routine, depending on the children, you know, your kids' needs, and again, everyone's different, but that having that routine of what we do as a family, while we've had this huge change and things will change, there's some things that we still have to do because this is what we have to do. The washing has to get done. And so having some understanding about that, I think, is, you know, and I think also with adult children and older teenagers, you can have those conversations. And I think that's incredibly important, to have those open conversations about, well, what do you need today from me and how can I help you? Because they will ask you those same things. So, yeah.
And also to let them in that, you know, like little things were hard for me. I got a big house, I had a big garden, I wasn't going to mow the lawns, and how was I going to sort this out? My brother did it for a very long time. And I couldn't ask him to do that all the time. And I'd say, you know, what do you think? I'm going to get someone in, you know, those little discussions. So they were part of knowing what was going on. I didn't ever let them in on big things that were going on in my head, I can tell you that now. But little things like that, you know, I would involve them, and I changed jobs. We talked about that. Little things, you have to make them, they're adults and are aware of things, but they don't need to know everything either.
Yeah, absolutely. So you said that you're a very, you know, naturally a very out there person, a very social person and everything. So you, your positivity towards life in general obviously comes through. When that's rocked by such a huge carpet pulling out from under us moment, how do you refine that, and how did you use that to move yourself forward?
I suppose there were a couple of things that I was very clear with in the beginning. I knew that I would probably never stay on my own. I kind of drew like a whiteboard with not really, but in my head I had a picture of what my life was going to be. I'd made decisions quite early. I wasn't going to stay on my own, that I was going to live life, because I had this internal feeling of Shane's not here to do it. So I've got this responsibility to live life for him. So I didn't want to sit in the corner and cry the whole time, because I just didn't feel like that was fair. You know, he died very unexpectedly. We didn't know he was going to die. So I just had this real responsibility to not always be happy, that's not what I'm saying, but to actually get out there and live life and participate in life. And I tried to do that right from the get-go. And I was very lucky. I had fantastic support from friends. I had a teacher friend who did a mindfulness course, and that really helped me to stop the constant talk in your head that you have as a widow in the beginning of all sorts of stuff. And you know, I learned a really great technique of being able to put it on the shelf and leave it for another time and not have to deal with things all the time, every minute. That certainly helped me. Having massages and time where I could just, you know, cry and be on my own, and asking for people to be around me as well, which was really hard. You know, I had a girlfriend that just knew that every weekend, if the kids weren't there, she'd come and sit with me and watch movies. And that's hard when you're not a person to ask for help, to have to reach out and say, yeah, actually, I really, for my own mental health, I need someone to be with me at the moment. And recognise that that's what you need. You know, I recognised that those were the things that I needed. I recognised I didn't need certain people in my life. I didn't need certain situations in my life, and I didn't feel guilty about that, because I just had to make sure that I was okay, because I wasn't going to be okay for anyone then. I had to, you know, have that feeling of, you know, being okay, I suppose. And that's why I went to a psychologist for the first 12 months and then into the second year. And it was mainly because, as you would know as a widow, there's things that you don't want to tell your friends, because they're like, should we ring Lifeline for her? It's not about that. It's about being able to express yourself in that environment with a professional that can say that's totally normal and that's okay, and not to have any judgment on you.
Yeah.
Whereas your friends and your family want to fix you and help you and stop you from feeling that pain. And unfortunately, that's the thing I learned very early on, is you can't stop from feeling that pain. It's just the way it is. You have to go through it. I remember sitting in one of the teachers was reading a book called The Bear Hunt, and I cried and cried and cried after the story. And I, walked to one of my friends and I said, "Yeah, I'm the bear hunt. You can't go over it. You can't go under it. You just got to go through it.
Yeah.
You just have to go through it." And it's awful, but you do. And there's no time or limit on how long that takes a person. It might take them a short, whatever it is. But I'm a big believer in feeling it and doing it and just, honouring it and just moving with it and knowing it's there. I think if you try and push it aside or bury it, or it just comes out at some stage anyway.
And sometimes at the wrong moments. I think
Exactly.
for me, that whole having to go through it And the other thing that someone had said to me is that you have to sit with your grief instead of trying to
Yes.
push it away or temper it down or, make light of it or whatever it is. Whatever we normally do in our Western-based culture is to just, everyone needs to be positive, everyone needs to be okay, and we just want everyone to think we're okay, but we're not okay, and that in itself is okay. And so just sitting with your grief and getting comfortable with how ugly and hard and awful it can be when we don't like to be uncomfortable and sad and awful. We have to sit with it until we can find our way, like you said, through it. So I absolutely agree with you with that. And
I think
yeah,
it's important to recognise what sort of person you are too. Like I'm the eldest, I'm very capable, independent, can be sometimes a bit of a control freak, and for me, I had to dump all those extra things that I had on me. I had to say to my mum one day, tell my sisters I'm not the eldest anymore. Someone has to do that role. At work, I was always very capable, and I was so grateful that I had a girlfriend, very close girlfriend I worked with, that I could just go to, and she'd say, okay, let's go to the first aid room, and I'd have a cry in there. And, you have to have that, you have to know that about yourself, I think, that what your capabilities and your limits are, and just not be ashamed of it, that, this is going to cause you to cry, or I can't actually handle that situation at the moment, someone else will have to.
Yeah, I need to step back for me. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's not easy when you've been the person that's always done it. It's really not. And it's not easy to pull away from people that don't give you anything back or what you need. That's not easy either. But you have to. You can't survive it if you don't look after yourself and have that. That's what keeps you positive. That's what, that, and me just thinking, I've got to just live life for him in that regard. And that's why in the first anniversary we went to Paris, he was always going to take me to Paris, and we never got there, and I took his ashes to Paris. And I took the children with me, and my mum came, and it was such a beautiful and sad experience. But there's that thing in me that went, he didn't get to do it, I'm going to do it. That I keep thinking along those lines of, I don't know. And also too, as we both know, we don't know how long we're here for either. So, sitting and crying in the corner is not a very nice life.
Yeah. So and I do appreciate that whole sense of responsibility about, it's my responsibility now to make those new memories for both of us, because we can't do the things that we were planned to do together. And I've done different things like that as well. And I always find it hard to do. And I just have to just take a breath and just jump and go ahead and do it. But I always, this mixture of sadness is always mixed with a sense of accomplishment and achievement and a sense of pride, because I know he would be proud of me for doing those things and for pushing myself to do things that I might not be comfortable doing, for the things that we plan to do together, but we would have, that opportunity is not there now. So I think if you do have things in your life like that, then don't see if you can get them done rather than just saying, well, that's never going to happen now. Definitely.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we know that the days and the weeks and the months and sometimes the years, it still has that roller coaster of emotions that we go through. What were some of the hardest things for you to navigate?
I think always his birthday is difficult, and the children and I go to his favourite restaurant. The three of us go, and we couldn't, and that was weird because we couldn't do it this year because it was lockdown in Melbourne. Yeah. So we did an alternative thing of different food, and we but we always honour it, and we've always spoken about the fact that we'll honour it. I think for me, the hardest thing though is New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, because of the connotation of what they were in the past of the celebration. And we always had a really fun time, and now it just feels really awkward because I'm getting to the stage now where I love to dance. I was dancing when I was younger, and I just want to dance the night away and just, but then there's this tinge of sadness always as well. And because it is, you know, we were in hospital all that night and the next day he passed away. It's just not got the same feeling.
Yeah.
It's not got any better really as time's gone on. The first year we were in Paris, so that was lovely. Mind you, we went to bed on New Year's Eve in Paris at like 9 o'clock because we just didn't know what else to do with ourselves. But yeah, it's just, I don't know. I'm hoping over time it changes again, maybe, I don't know. But at the moment, it's probably the most difficult. Like I would imagine if someone passed away on Christmas Day, it's the same sort of thing, you know, it's a significant day and it has different, you know, a meaning, a celebration, you know, feeling for people.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is difficult.
Yeah. I can't imagine, Melissa, and I think all the things you're saying are very valid things, you know, and, you know, New Year's is, you know, that celebration of new beginnings and new goals and all those things. Generally, you know, again, what we do as a culture and what people accept and will ask you about. And now that causes pain to think about those things at the same time, and sadness. So,
Yeah.
you know, I think that you'll just keep getting there. You'll keep finding your way forward with that. And I'm sure it will continue to move over time for you, you know,
And
there'll be
I
good years
must
and
admit,
bad years.
I've tried to encourage the children because they're, you know, 26 and 23, go
Yeah.
have some fun, and they've done various things, but inevitably it's just not going to be the same. So it's just hard, really. It's just hard, you know.
And I think you're right. There's no answer to that. It's just something
No.
that you'll have to work out individually in a family, and that will hopefully happen in time.
Exactly.
So when you do hit those really hard days and you do have those things that take us back to the more intense grief that we probably have transitioned out of, what do you do to try and regain that positivity that you try to have across all your life?
I think reflecting, you know, the day and the build-up's often worse.
Yeah.
And I kind of am glad when the first and it's the second, because it gets to the second, I go, right, okay, Melissa, pull yourself together now. That's it. You know, it's a new year. What have you got to look forward to? I mean, it's kind of funny thinking about the 2nd of January 2020 because no one knew what we were going to have this year.
Exactly. Yeah.
But
This year.
2021, January 2, I do try and use that then as my day to go, okay, this is the beginning of the year. What have you got to look forward to? What are you doing? How are you going about it? I mean, look, it's ridiculous to say, but maybe I'm lucky, how silly to say, that it is the beginning of the year, because then I can look forward to a whole year's space as well.
Yeah.
Pass away in the middle of the year, and then it's, you know what I mean? So it's sort of like I go from the second and go, okay, what are you going to do this year? And how are you going to get about it? And what's your, not goals. I don't set goals anymore. I don't see the point in it. But I have gotten better at that. Like over the last few years, I've started to see things more long term. I had a real problem in the first 2 years to think about doing anything a couple of weeks in advance, because my attitude was, well, I might not be here. You know, I had that sort of thing. So I just live more day to day, which you still should, but I'm happy to look forward to a holiday or, you know, someone's wedding or things like that now. I do feel differently towards those long-term goals.
Yeah, that's very, I had similar experience. I'm generally very goal oriented, and we'd have listed, you know, I'd have personal ones and career ones and all these things, and I would, you know, work towards those, and I would have career goals over, you know, 5 years and all the rest of it. Throw that in the air, you know. It's just like, okay. And I am now getting back to that myself, but I agree. In those first couple of years, it was just like, I can't even think to the end of the month, let alone the end of the year or next year. And so very much that getting through the day to day, and then extending that to weeks and then months. And I think over time, as we sit with our grief and we work through that in our own way, that some of those things do start to come back. But at the same time, it's still different the way that I do my planning now. I don't do it the way that I used to. And because our perspective on life has changed so dramatically, that it colours how we move forward as well, definitely. One of
And
the
you
things,
know,
sorry, what was
that's that's the thing I suppose that we get from grief is we are never the same, and we
that?
will always do different things very differently now than what we
Yeah.
used to because of our circumstances.
Well, and I think it also, just speaking personally for myself, in many respects, I'm the same person, but I'm also a very different person to what I
Yeah,
was before the loss. So
yeah,
it's how I'm aligning those now. That's something that I'm sort of working through. But yeah, I know I approach things differently to what I did if I hadn't experienced that, the loss of Dave. So I imagine it's the same for you. We know we're different
yeah.
people. Yeah, fundamentally the same, but still very different. One of the things you said earlier is that one of the things that helped you in the early days was also connecting, reaching out and finding a young widowed community.
Yeah.
So how did you said you found an online group. How did you build those connections, and how did connecting with others in the widowed community help you continue this path forward?
Oh, I don't know how much I could have gotten through without them. They in Melbourne we have, well, before COVID we had regular catch-ups, and I think in the April I mustered up the courage to go to one, which was really hard. It was on the other side of the city, but I just had this real need of wanting to talk to people about their experience. And I met a widow who had the similar time frame to me, and also a sudden death, and a similar age to me. So I connected with her straight away, and we're still really good friends. And that seems to be what's happened is there's another one Sal, who lives close. She's got children similar age, sudden death as well. We just connected, and we catch up individually. I still catch up with the groups when we can. I love the online group because it allows you to read anybody's posts, but you don't have to participate if you don't want to, because sometimes you don't want to. But then you can, and you can get some great advice, particularly, on our group. I've noticed people get advice about their children, about finance, and how they went about doing certain things, and, even simple things about Centrelink and what they offer. There's some really practical advice as well as emotional stories as well of how they've gone through. And I wasn't a great big participator online. I was a listener and took all that information in. And I particularly loved hearing at the time people that were further along in the journey and how they were going, because that was an interest to me to see that they were okay. That was really important for me to read, that they were 2, 3, 4 years on, and that this is what they were experiencing. I think everybody's different, of course. We all have different, we all do things differently, but it was just really good for me to hear those experiences, and for me to go, oh, that's exactly how I feel, or, oh, I did that. And, those sort of comments were important. And now, being further along, I've been able to mentor, talk to people that have been in the same situation as me, but are not so further along, and give them advice. And to me, that's been the most beautiful thing, because one of the girls I talk to regularly, she said, is this hard for you to go back? And I said, no, because actually it's been fantastic for me to go, gee, I've come a long way. It is hard. It's hard to hear some of the stuff, it really is, but it's also good for you to reflect and understand that you're not in the same position as you were 4 or 5 years ago. So it's been really good for me, and the catch-ups have been fantastic when we could do them, just to make that connection. I know I met you at our first Widows Weekend Away, which happened to be in Melbourne.
Yeah.
And even I remember talking to a girlfriend before I went to that. I had to drive into the city on my own, which I'd never done very often. It was a big deal, but my advice to all the other widows is, please come, because you just make lifelong friendships with people that just get it, basically.
Yeah.
There's
I couldn't
nothing
agree
better
more.
than that.
And I think, and there's lots of different online, you've got a very special one in Melbourne that's been established for quite a while. And certainly that's something that we've tried to do in First Light as well, create these private spaces that are online that we don't at times, as we talked about earlier, want to be a burden to our families or get those funny looks when we say something that because someone hasn't got that lived experience. So creating those online communities where people connect in their own way and have face-to-face community connections as well is something that creates a sense of hope. I hope, I believe, and makes you think you're not the only crazy one in the room at a family gathering because you've got feelings and thoughts going through your head, or in a group of friends, or at a work function, because you can read the stories that other people have posted, and all those questions that are hard to ask people, like, what do I do with my wedding ring, and what did you do about the clothes in the cupboard, and all those very basic practical things that when you say to people who haven't gone through a loss, they're just like mortified and they don't know what to do. But being able to share that and see the ideas that people have had, I think is immeasurably helpful. So I'm glad you found an online community and a community in Melbourne that I know is very active and supports us here at First Light as well. So it's so great.
I think the thing that you said too, that there's lots of different ideas, and it means that you can pick and choose and go, well, that's really good, I'll do that with my ring, or oh, they didn't do that, so it's okay that I haven't done that. I think that's really important, that because you end up identifying, and it just makes you feel better, if nothing else.
And I think also, as we said before, grief is such an individual thing, and so it sort of validates that there's lots of different ways to approach whatever you're going through, and not one way is right, not one way is wrong. It's about finding what's right for you and your family circumstances and what you're comfortable doing, and that's okay. And I think the online groups, and for me connecting with other widow people, certainly helped really cement that for me, that there was lots of ways that I could deal with them, and that will be okay for me. So, yeah.
I think too, I know First Light does this as well with your meetings. Everything is totally up to you. You can say you're coming and not turn up and we don't care. It's because we know what it's like. I think for me, going to a social event like that, I hadn't actually participated in, in that period of time. What made me feel really comfortable was knowing they were all single and didn't have partners to bring, because I certainly didn't want to turn up in that first 12 months. I loathed to think about all these happy couples. I thought if I had to turn up and there were couples there, I wouldn't cope with it. I don't want to see anyone happy. That sounds so selfish, but I didn't want that in my face. So going to a social event for widows, knowing that we were all on our own, is what made it so much more easier for me to actually do.
Yeah, because you're not going to get that question of, so where's your husband tonight? It's like, oh,
exactly.
God, now I have to tell you about my dead husband. Okay, so yeah, that's brought the mood down for everyone. So yeah, absolutely. And I agree with you. The first time that I think for anyone, the first time that you put yourself out of the comfort zone and go to one of these things is incredibly difficult and incredibly overwhelming. And you doubt yourself and you question why you're doing it and all those things. And I guess what I want to say to people is, feeling that way going to the first time on these things is very normal, but take a chance, and I believe that you'll find connections and help within the broader widow community and make you feel like you're connected and you're not alone and crazy going through this yourself. Melissa, thank you so much. Is there anything else that you would like to give in terms of advice for other young widows?
Oh, just take your time and use what you have around you. It's not easy asking for help, but inevitably you just have to. You can't do it on your own, particularly if you have children, and even if you don't, you just can't move through this life on your own. So whether it's finding a support group or someone that's supporting you, I think that's the most important thing, is that you need a tribe, and whoever that is, or whatever that looks like, but you certainly need some sort of tribal network behind you. to help you through it. And it's, you know, there's no shame in asking for help ever. But yeah, I couldn't have done it on my own. There's no way, without my friends and family and my widows.
Excellent. Well, Melissa, it's so great to talk to you again. Thank you so much for sharing your story and the story of your children as well, and being so open and honest and candid about that, particularly as we move down in time. It is a bit hard to go back and put
Yeah.
yourself back in those early days. So I do appreciate you doing that and being able to share your story, because I know that it will help other widows out, other young widows out there. Um, can I also just say to everyone, please check out our website, firstlight.org.au, for more resources on being widowed, or if your friends or family or someone that you know is widowed, resources that can help you help them. And also you can find other of our Widow Talk videos on our resources page, and you can follow our YouTube channel as well, which will give you more of these videos as well. So thank you so much, Melissa. Best of luck for you and the kids in the future as you keep moving forward. And thanks everyone for watching, and we will see you next time. Bye.